Hey, this is Joel Baker with American Giants, and just want to wish all of you a very Merry Christmas. I'm really excited about these new YouTube episodes coming out every week now. So it's Christmas right around the corner. Tomorrow's Christmas, so I thought we would talk about Santas. International Fiberglass made what some people call Freaky Santa, other people call Demented Santa, and it's really a cool story. A few weeks ago, I actually talked about this on one of my Facebook posts, but I thought I'd do a whole video on it for Christmas. Back in the very, very early 60s, we have a guy named Bob Pruitt who started making fiberglass figures. This is the very beginning of the fiberglass figure animal advertising craze that hit the 60s. And Bob Pruitt was making like horses. He started out with horses and then cows, and restaurants and businesses started using these figures. Eventually he went on to make the Muffler Men and the Paul Bunyans, but he also made a Santa. We know Bill Swan made the first Bunyan, and I think Bill also made the first Santa. Now Bob was a little disappointed with that first Santa that was made because it's almost like the proportions got wrong. You know, you have a very similar head to a Muffler Man, and everything's fairly proportional until you get down to this guy's, like, between his waist and his feet, there's like no knees, and it's just a few feet from his waist down to his boots. And it's like, I don't know if they had to stay in a height restriction or what, but he's only around 12 feet tall, so he's much shorter than the Giants. Bob was less than impressed with how this guy turned out. And Bob was more than happy to sell that mold to International Fiberglass when they purchased all the, or most of his molds, including the Muffler Men. International Fiberglass continued to make the Santa. We know Bob made a few, but International Fiberglass then went on to make them, and I know that they were making Santas all the way up into around 1970, 1971 was probably the last Santa that was made. Now people have asked me how many Santas were there, and I don't think it was a ton. I mean, I think they were ordered, but it wasn't their most popular Giant. For obvious reasons, it just looks a little crazy. And so I think they probably made, I'm guessing between 15 and 20 total Santas were made. And then of course, today we have 7 Santas that are left. So let's talk about the Santas that are around today. We have, we'll start on the West Coast in Hayward, California. You have Bell Plastics, run by a guy named Bruce Kennedy, and we've done quite a bit of work and videos on him years ago. And this was one of his early, when he started collecting Muffler Men, the Santa was one of the first things he found. I believe that Santa was originally owned by a place called Dooley's, the hardware store. It was a massive store. I think they also had a Muffler Man on the roof, but they also had this Santa. If not 2 Santas, but he was at Dooley's, and he stood there for a number of years. Back then in the 60s, everybody knew what Dooley's was. And then he went into storage, like a lot of these Giants do, and then years later he was being sold, and that's when Bruce got him. And Bruce set him up right on the corner of his property by the street. So he's like one of the first Giants you see when you visit Bell Plastics. And there's the Santa, classic International Fiberglass Santa. The next one I don't know a ton about. I know it's in Hampton Beach, New Hampshire, right on the coast. And I've seen pictures of him very much modified from his original look. And I've also seen pictures of him looking very much like a Santa. Not far away in Manchester is what we have, what's called Demented Santa. This is a Santa that's seasonal at like a Christmas tree shop. And apparently he's very well known in the area. So much so that they have created a Facebook page for him called Demented Santa. And again, it's just a reflection on, how weird these Santas look. Personally, I have never been a huge fan of this Santa. Now that I've gotten really into International Fiberglass and the history, of course, he's part of the family, right? But there are those of you out there that are really into him, and he's almost got his own little cult following. of people that really like him. It's kind of like, I gave this example not long ago, it's kind of like when you have a baseball card company and they make really cool baseball cards and knocking them out of the park, no pun intended. And then you have one that's a misprint or something's a little weird with it, and they didn't make very many. And now these days you have a handful of specific collectors that all want that. And that's kind of how I feel this Santa is. There is another Santa that I have looked for without success in Pasadena. It's at a garden shop in Pasadena, like a landscape garden place. I've seen pictures of it there. I've searched there. I believe there's still a Santa somewhere in Pasadena. Not too far away in Irving, however, there is a confirmed Santa that's at Santa's Garden. It was at least confirmed of 2019 and stood in the out front next to the Christmas trees. All right, the next Santa is really cool. It's not far from me here in Colorado Springs, at Santa's Christmas Village. It's a well-known amusement park. This place is owned by a guy named Tom Haggard, and this guy's been doing it for years. Somehow he stayed open through fires and financial collapses and the pandemic, and he's got a bunch of original IF stuff, no muffler men, but he's got an SO Tiger, he's got a Sinclair Dino, and he's got an IF Santa. And I went and visited with Tom maybe a year or two ago, got some great pictures. He kind of told me the history, and it was really cool to spend some time with a guy that was one of the original buyers of these giants back when they were on the market. And you weren't just buying them from someone else, you were buying them from International Fiberglass. The last two are really special to me because I'm good friends with both of the owners. I want to talk first about Vintage Roadside. Many of you who follow me probably follow Vintage Roadside. Jeff, he's been doing this a lot longer than I have. And many of you may not know this, but I'm actually really, really good friends with Jeff. We collaborate a lot on Muffler Men. We share history and information. He's a collector of vintage slides, so we're both always on the prowl for, vintage pictures of giants and these Muffler Men. And so he is one of those people I was telling you about earlier that just really likes the Santas. He loves his freaky Santa. And a number of years ago, you may remember, I helped Magic Forest with the sale of their collection, and I went out there and looked at all their stuff and agreed to put it all on my website for sale and find buyers. And one of the first things I saw was the SO Tigers, but I also saw they had an IF Santa, and I told my buddy Jeff, and he said, put me down for it. So he purchased that from Magic Forest, and it was shipped to Mark Klein and sat in his boneyard for a few months, probably. This is back in 2018-ish. And eventually Jeff was able to figure out shipping, right? We all know the hassles with shipping giants, right? It's always the cog in the wheel. But Jeff finally figured out shipping, and he got the Santa delivered to him out west. And now there's a yearly tradition where Vintage Roadside puts up the Santa every year and posts pictures of it. So during the summer, he's sleeping with all his other fiberglass friends, and during the Christmas time, he's set up. But that was a really unique experience for Jeff to get him, and it's always fun when a giant arrives and you get to unload them and check them out, and of course you're looking for all the details of how they were made and if there's still an International Fiberglass stamp on it and all that stuff. So those of you who are into these giants and those of you who are lucky enough to own them know what I'm talking about. The last Santa I want to talk about is owned by my friend Aaron. Aaron, you may remember, I did a video on him before. He is the guy in Galva, Illinois that got the Viking, the IF Viking, out of Arkansas, and I went up there and did a whole story on Aaron and visited him in his awesome place and all his signs and all that cool stuff. Since then, he's gotten an International Fiberglass SO Tiger, and then a few weeks ago, he calls me out of the blue and tells me this amazing story, and I'll let him tell it to you.
So here he is, my new addition, Creepy Santa, all the way from Alamo, California. Pretty excited to have him. I had ran a want ad years ago in search of a muffler man on the internet, put my phone number out there. A guy had contacted me and said that he had this giant fiberglass Santa Claus and it was laying next to the dumpster and wanted to know if I was interested in buying it. I probably wouldn't even have thought about it, but I remembered watching Joel's video that he posted on American Giants about International Fiberglass making the Santa Claus. So I was pretty excited. I said, go ahead, send me some pictures. He sent me these pictures. We made a deal. I contacted a shipping company, U-Ship. A guy responded to that ad, said he was coming this way. He loaded him up and he arrived last night at 8 o'clock. So here he is for all to enjoy.
So there you have it, a little bit of history and details on the International Fiberglass Santa. I hope you all have a great Christmas season, and I'll see you much more in the coming year with these weekly YouTube episodes. Take care.